I went in my beach house to relax, but found my sister-in-law was already inside with her whole family and shouted, "Why is this stupid Leech here? Get out." I smiled and said, "Okay, I'll leave," but what I did after made her life hell. I drove 3 hours down to my beach house that Saturday, humming along to my favorite playlist, the sun glinting off the hood of my Tesla. I'd just wrapped up the most brutal project of my career at the architectural firm where I'm a senior designer. And I couldn't wait for one thing: peace. No phone calls, no emails, no chaos. Just me, the ocean breeze, and silence. That was all I wanted. My name is Sophia, I'm 34 years old, and I've worked myself to exhaustion since my 20s to build something real. This beach house wasn't inherited or gifted, it was the tangible reward of endless overtime, canceled vacations, and nights spent sketching blueprints until sunrise. Every square inch of that property represented my sacrifice and determination. But the moment I pulled up to the circular driveway, I felt my chest tighten. Strange cars were parked everywhere: a Range Rover, a minivan, an SUV I didn't recognize. Loud laughter and music echoed from the open balcony, mixing with the sound of children's voices. I frowned. A maintenance mix-up? A security breach? My mind raced through possibilities as I gripped my steering wheel. When I stepped inside, I froze completely. My sister-in-law, Kelsey, a woman with perfectly highlighted blonde hair and designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, was sitting on my white Italian leather couch, sipping a cocktail like she owned the place. Her 2 kids were running through my carefully decorated hallway, their sticky fingers leaving marks of melted ice cream across my wooden floors. And there was my brother, Ethan, my own flesh and blood, setting up a professional-grade grill on my mahogany deck like this was some sort of family barbecue destination. My throat went dry. Before I could even form words, before I could ask a single question, Kelsey's head snapped toward me. Her face twisted into something ugly, something I'd never seen directed at me before. She jumped up from my couch, her cocktail sloshing slightly. "Why is this stupid Leech here?" she screamed, her voice cutting through the laughter and music like a knife. "Get out. Get out of our house." The entire room went silent. Everything stopped. The children froze mid-run. Ethan's hands dropped from the grill. Even the ocean breeze seemed to hold its breath. I blinked slowly, processing what I'd just heard. Not a mistake. Not a misunderstanding. An attack, deliberate and cruel. "Excuse me," I heard myself say, my voice steady but hollow. Kelsey sneered at me, her perfectly manicured hand gesturing dismissively. "You heard me, Sophia. You always show up where you're not wanted. We finally get a break from our boring lives, and here you come, ruining everything. Go back to whatever hole you came from. Go back to your office. Go back to being alone." My brother opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, to defend me, to apologize. But nothing came out. He just looked down at his shoes, ashamed or perhaps afraid. I'd never know which. I felt something shift inside me, not rage exactly, but something colder and more calculating. I looked at Kelsey, at her smug expression, at this moment she thought she owned. Then I smiled. Just a small, cold smile. "Okay," I said softly. "I'll leave." And I did. I turned around without another word, walked back to my Tesla, got in, and drove away. But the peace I'd been chasing all week was gone, replaced with a quiet rage I'd never experienced before. That night, sitting in my apartment downtown, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything but stare at the ceiling and replay Kelsey's words over and over. But what bothered me more than her cruelty was the question that kept me awake: how did they get into my house? The next morning, I called Marcus, the security company I'd hired 2 years ago to protect the property. I needed answers, and I needed them immediately. Marcus's voice on the phone was careful, apologetic. "Ms. Mitchell, there's something I need to tell you. Your brother called about 5 days ago. He said he wanted to disable the alarm system for a week because he said he owned the house. He claimed he had full access to the property and that he needed the system down so it wouldn't interfere with their stay." I felt my stomach drop. "My brother does not own that house," I said quietly. "I own it. Completely and solely. He has never had ownership of anything on that property." The lie was breathtaking. Not just the act of Ethan lying to security that I could almost understand in a moment of weakness. But him pretending to own my house? Him calling it their property? That was calculated. That was intentional. That was Ethan letting Kelsey convince him that he had some right to what I'd built. After I hung up with Marcus, I opened the app on my phone connected to the security cameras, the ones I'd had installed specifically for situations like break-ins or emergencies. I scrolled through the footage and watched the timeline of their arrival. There it was, 2 days before I showed up, They pulled through my gates like they were arriving at a resort they'd booked months in advance. No hesitation. No doubt. Just pure entitlement. Then I checked Kelsey's Instagram, something I rarely did. I hadn't followed her, I'd never wanted to, but her profile was public. And there it was, posted just hours after she'd screamed at me a video of her standing on my deck with the ocean in the background, a glass of rose in her hand, her kids laughing in the sand. The caption read, "Beach life with the family, nothing like a getaway in our home by the sea, blessed family time beach house." 2 words hit me like a punch to the chest, our home. That phrase changed everything. It wasn't just an insult anymore. It was a deliberate claim. She was telling her followers, her friends, her entire social circle that this property was somehow hers, or at least that she had the right to it. She was stealing not just my space, but my narrative. People who saw that post would believe her. They'd think Sophia's successful beach house belonged to Kelsey's successful life. I sat on my couch in my apartment for 3 hours without moving. My hands were shaking. My jaw was clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. And then, something crystallized inside me. A decision formed, quiet and absolute. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to beg my brother to see reason or try to appeal to Kelsey's non-existent sense of decency. Instead, I was going to remind everyone, starting with Kelsey, exactly who owned what. And I was going to do it in a way she would never forget. I didn't contact them that day. Or the next. I waited for their arrogance to marinate, for their entitlement to grow even stronger. I let them believe they'd gotten away with it. I let them think I was hurt and discouraged and would simply accept this new reality. But on the 3rd day, I made a call that would change everything. I called my lawyer, Robert Chang, a man who'd handled my real estate and business matters for the past 5 years. Robert was professional, precise, and most importantly, he didn't ask a lot of questions. He just listened to the facts and understood the implications immediately. "They've been there how long?" he asked. "At least 2 weeks," I said. "Probably longer." "Has your brother ever had any legal claim to the property? Any documentation, written agreement, nothing at all?" "Nothing. He's never paid a cent. It's entirely in my name." "Then you have a straightforward case," Robert said. "They're trespassing. I can draft an eviction notice and have it served today if you'd like." "I'd like," I said. By that evening, as the sun was setting over my apartment and casting long shadows across my living room, a certified process server was pulling up to my beach house. My brother and his wife were still there, probably enjoying another cocktail on my deck, probably laughing about the stupid Leech who'd shown up and run away. They had no idea what was coming. At exactly 9:47 p.m. my phone rang. It was Kelsey, and she was furious. I could hear the panic underneath the anger, the realization that something had gone very wrong. "You're insane," she screamed without even saying hello. "You can't just kick us out. We're family." I stayed calm. I'd been preparing for this moment all day, rehearsing it in my mind until my response felt natural. "Actually, I can," I said evenly. "You're trespassing on private property. The locks will be changed in the morning, and any personal belongings left behind will be packed up and returned to your address within 72 hours. "This is insane," Kelsey's voice cracked. "You're so petty, Sophia. We're family." "We didn't mean anything by it. You called me a leech," I said in my own home. "You humiliated me. And then you posted pictures on Instagram claiming it was yours. You should have remembered what family means before you decided to take what wasn't yours." I hung up before she could respond. Ethan called 15 minutes later. His voice was angry but threaded with shame, the shame of someone who'd been caught doing something wrong. "Sophia, please don't do this. The kids are upset." Kelsey's freaking out. "We didn't mean how long?" I cut him off. "What? How long have you two been using my house without telling me? How many times have you gone there when you thought I wouldn't find out?" Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear him calculating, trying to figure out what would sound better. 2 weeks, he finally admitted. Just 2 weeks. 2 weeks. They'd been infiltrating my sanctuary for 2 full weeks, and I'd had no idea. 2 weeks of them pretending they owned it, of them building some fantasy where they belonged there, of them staging this entire elaborate lie. "The locks change in the morning," I said, and hung up. I spent the rest of the night feeling something shift inside me. It wasn't satisfaction exactly, it was too early for that. It was determination mixed with a kind of cold clarity I'd never felt before. These people had made a choice when they decided to humiliate me, and now I was making one right back. But I wasn't done. After the eviction notice was served and they were forced to leave my beach house, I took a step that I'd been contemplating for years, but had never had the courage to take. I sat down at my dining room table with my laptop, opened my banking portal, and began systematically dismantling the financial safety net I'd spent over a decade constructing. My brother Ethan and his wife Kelsey had relied on me for so long that they'd forgotten what independence looked like, and I'd enabled it. I'd let them believe they could disrespect me because they knew I'd still be there, still paying their bills, still fixing their problems. That ended tonight. First, I revoked every shared authorization I'd ever given Ethan. He'd had access to a savings account I'd set up years ago when he was going through a rough patch. The money in that account wasn't something he'd earned, it was something I'd gifted him, a safety net for emergencies. I transferred it back to my primary account and removed his name entirely. Next, I canceled the monthly transfers I'd been making to help them cover their rent. For 3 years, I'd been sending them $2,500 every single month, $2,500 that I'd earned through grueling 60-hour work weeks. Money I'd set aside from my own savings to keep my brother's family afloat. I disabled those automatic transfers with a few clicks, wondering how long it would take him to notice that the money had stopped coming. Then I went to the insurance company and canceled the policy I'd been paying for on Ethan's car, a Toyota Camry I'd co-signed for. That policy alone was costing me $98 a month. Not a huge amount in the grand scheme of things, but it was the principle of it. I'd been paying for him to drive. The most significant action, though, was canceling the co-signed mortgage I'd agreed to 5 years ago. I called the bank and worked with them to remove my name from the loan. It wasn't immediate, these things take time, but I put the process in motion. My brother would now have to figure out how to carry that mortgage on his own, without my credit backing him up. As I clicked through each transaction, each cancellation, each deletion of my financial support, I felt lighter with each one. It was like removing chains I hadn't realized were weighing me down. By midnight, I was done. I sat back in my chair and closed my laptop, exhausted but oddly peaceful. Then I waited to see what would happen. The first thing I noticed was silence. For a week, I didn't hear from Ethan. No calls, no texts, no explanations. Radio silence. I imagined him checking his bank account, expecting the $2,500 that should have been there. I imagined his confusion turning to panic. I imagined him trying to figure out how to make next month's rent without my help. By the second week, the ripples started. Ethan called me on a Wednesday evening. His voice was stressed, strained, nothing like the brother I'd grown up with. "Sophia, we have a problem," he said. "My mortgage lender is saying something about your name on the loan. They're talking about it becoming my sole responsibility, and my credit's not good enough to carry it by myself." "What did you do?" "I stopped financing your life," I said simply. "But Sophia, the house is your responsibility now," I finished. "Just like my beach house is mine. You'll figure it out." But the real shock came 3 weeks later when I got a call from a mutual friend. Ethan had been laid off. The firm where he worked had gone through unexpected layoffs, and my brother, who'd never been particularly stellar at his job, was among the first to go. I didn't call him to offer sympathy. I didn't send money. I just let him sit with it. And I waited to see what Kelsey would do when the money truly ran out. It started with Kelsey's Instagram going quiet. For months, she'd been posting constantly pictures of herself at brunches, shots of her kids in expensive clothing, images of the beach house, which she'd now deleted, all curated to present this perfect life of leisure and abundance. The narrative she'd built was simple. She was a woman of means, married to a successful man, living the kind of life that other women should envy, but without my money flowing in, without my brother's steady income, without the lies being reinforced by constant material proof, the entire fiction began to crumble. Her friends started noticing. I heard through the grapevine, and social media is always a grapevine, that when Kelsey brought up the beach house at a girls' lunch, one of her friends had pulled out her phone and shown everyone Kelsey's Instagram post. "This is your house?" the friend had asked. I thought it was Sophia's. The story of what Kelsey had done, how she'd trespassed, how she'd been evicted, began to spread through their social circle like wildfire. Kelsey wasn't the aspirational figure anymore. She was the cautionary tale. Then Ethan lost his job, and everything accelerated. Without his income, and without my safety net, the reality of their financial situation became impossible to hide. They stopped going out. Their kids stopped wearing the designer brands. Kelsey's salon appointments became less frequent, and her hair started looking like actual hair again instead of an advertisement for expensive highlights. She called me on a Tuesday morning, and I could hear that she'd been crying. "Sophia?" Her voice was small, nothing like the confident sneer I'd heard at my beach house. "Can we talk?" I almost didn't answer. Almost let the call go to voicemail. But something made me pick up. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I know I messed up." "Yes," I said. "You did. Sophia, I'm asking for your help. Please." The kids, they need things. Ethan's been looking for a job, but it's hard right now. We're struggling. I'm so embarrassed to even call you, but I didn't know what else to do. I listened to her plead. I listened to her cry. And I felt nothing. You humiliated me in my own home, I said quietly. You called me a leech while living off my money. You posted pictures online pretending my house was yours. And you did all of this knowing exactly what I'd sacrificed to build that life. You did it anyway. So no, Kelsey, I'm not going to help you. So you're really going to let us struggle? Her voice had turned desperate, almost unrecognizable. I'm not letting you struggle, I said. I'm just not sponsoring it anymore. I hung up and blocked her number. That was 3 months ago. I don't know exactly how bad things got for them, and honestly, I don't want to know. What I do know is that Kelsey's Instagram has been dormant for a while now, and the few posts she has made are entirely different. No more brunches. No more designer goods. Just pictures of her kids at soccer practice and vague posts about struggling but surviving. The narrative changed because the reality changed. And I discovered something interesting about revenge. Sometimes it doesn't require you to do anything at all. Sometimes it just requires you to stop doing what you've always done. The fall happens naturally. Word travels fast in a family, especially when there's scandal involved. Within 2 months, everyone knew what had happened. My aunt called me on a Thursday evening, and her voice was tight with judgment. Sophia, I need to talk to you about your brother, she said without preamble. I braced myself. How could you kick his family out of a beach house like that? He's your blood. He's your brother. Families don't do that to each other. I'd heard this argument before, not from her specifically, but from the echoes of every manipulation, every guilt trip, every moment someone had suggested that my obligation to family superseded my right to my own life. I didn't kick him out, I said evenly. I reclaimed what was mine. It's just a beach house, Sophia. No, I interrupted. It's not just a beach house. It's the result of 15 years of work. It's proof that I built something. And he decided that without asking, without permission, without even the basic respect of telling me, he could take that. He could use it, claim it, and humiliate me for showing up there. My aunt was quiet for a long moment. Your brother needs help, she finally said. Then he should ask me respectfully, I said. Not after he's proven that respect isn't something he's capable of offering me. I hung up the phone, and in that moment, something shifted inside me. I realized that I'd spent so many years trying to be the person who fixed everyone's problems, who said yes to every request, who sacrificed her own peace for the comfort of people who didn't appreciate her. That person was gone. The calls kept coming over the next few weeks, not just from my aunt, but from cousins, friends of the family, people who'd heard the story and decided that I was the villain. They painted me as cold, selfish, vindictive. They said I was overreacting. They suggested that I should just move on and help out your family. But I didn't feel cold. I felt clear. For the first time in my life, I understood the difference between being kind and being used, and I understood that setting boundaries wasn't cruelty, it was survival. I stopped answering calls. I stopped explaining myself. I just existed in my boundaries like they were walls I'd finally given myself permission to build, and I defended them with a quiet absoluteness that shocked everyone who knew the old Sophia. The family drama continued in its own orbit, but I was no longer at its center. I was observing from a distance, and it was the most peaceful distance I'd ever known. The next summer arrived like a benediction. I drove down to my beach house on a Saturday morning, the same Saturday morning that this had all started a year ago. But everything was different now. I'd renovated the entire property over the past few months. The white couch that Kelsey had sat on was gone, replaced with a beautiful charcoal sectional. The wooden floors had been refinished and now gleamed like glass. I'd repainted the walls from their previous neutral beige to a rich, warm cream with accent walls in a soft blue that matched the ocean visible from every window. I'd updated the kitchen, replaced the deck furniture, and added new artwork to every room. And above the entryway, I had a custom sign installed. It was elegant and simple, carved from reclaimed wood earned. Not given. I sat on my new patio that first evening, sipping a glass of Pinot Grigio as the sun descended toward the horizon, turning the sky into shades of orange and pink and gold. The ocean was calm, the breeze was gentle, and for the first time in over a year, I felt genuinely at peace. My phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened Instagram, and there was Kelsey's profile in my notifications. I checked it out of pure habit more than anything else. What I found made me smile. She'd posted a video advertisement for some kind of dropshipping business selling cheap jewelry online. The video quality was grainy, the lighting was poor, and her makeup looked hastily applied. The caption read, "Starting my own business, check out these amazing pieces, link in bio." The comments were sparse. Mostly crickets. No one was buying the lie anymore, and more importantly, Kelsey had stopped even trying to maintain the pretense of having money. The perfect life wasn't even a fiction now, it was just gone. I didn't comment. I didn't reach out. I didn't send her any message at all. I simply smiled and closed the app. People always ask me if I regret it. If I wish I'd handled things differently. If I wonder whether I was too harsh, too cold, too unforgiving. The answer is no. Because the truth that took me years to understand is this: I didn't ruin Kelsey's life. She did that herself. I just stopped financing it. For so long, I'd been the person who said yes, the person who paid the bills. The person who fixed the problems. I was the safety net that made everyone else's choices consequence-free. And what I learned through all of this is that protecting people from consequences doesn't save them, it just delays their reckoning and makes it worse when it finally arrives. When I evicted them from my beach house, I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest. When I canceled their financial support, I wasn't being vindictive. I was being clear. And when I refused to rescue them after they fell, I wasn't being cold. I was being wise. My brother eventually did reach out to me months after everything had settled. We met for coffee on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and he was humbled in a way I'd never seen him before. He apologized, genuinely apologized, and told me that hitting rock bottom had actually helped him. He'd gotten a new job, a modest one but honest. He'd moved into a small apartment and was learning what it meant to earn his own way. He and Kelsey had divorced shortly after their financial crisis became undeniable, and while I felt some sadness about that, I also felt relief. "I let her influence me," he said over his coffee. "I let her make me feel like I was entitled to things. I let her convince me that using you was somehow okay because you'd always been there." I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm truly sorry. I believed him. And I forgave him. Not because he asked, but because I'd already moved on. That night, sitting at my beach house as the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought about the day Kelsey screamed at me, the day I drove away with quiet rage in my chest. I thought about how that moment had changed everything, not because I'd sought revenge, but because I'd finally chosen myself. Sometimes revenge isn't about shouting or fighting or making grand gestures. Sometimes it's about walking away. It's about letting the truth dismantle the lies. It's about refusing to keep carrying people who weren't carrying you. Because when I smiled and said, "Okay, I'll leave," I wasn't just leaving my beach house that day. I was leaving behind every piece of myself that had ever tolerated disrespect. I was leaving behind the guilt that wasn't mine to carry. I was leaving behind the need to be needed by people who didn't respect me. And in doing that, simply removing my support from a system built entirely on taking advantage of my generosity, I didn't ruin anyone's life. I just finally saved my own. The sign above my entryway reads "Earned," not given, and that applies to more than just my beach house. It applies to my peace, my boundaries, my life, my future. All of it earned through hard work, protected by firm resolve, and defended by a woman who finally learned that the greatest revenge isn't hurting someone else. It's building something beautiful and keeping it entirely for yourself.